Merry Christmas. It was yesterday, but still, Merry Christmas. And the kind of guy that has been involved with Christmas programs for years. And so about June, I start thinking about what songs should be for this year's. So I've been singing Christmas songs since July. I think I got a late start this year, and they just are feeling it. And it's Christmas, and it'll be Christmas time until people tell me to stop. But we have to be honest that Christmas for everyone is not. It's not always the most wonderful time of the year, right? I mean, there's a lot of food and there's a lot of people around. There's a lot of festivities, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of good specials on TV. But it's not always a happy Christmas time. There's memories that are good. There's memories that are bad. There are times that are recent and there are times that are gone. And you'll never get those back. Those good memories have now become something so distant that you'll never be able to touch them again. And there's a lot of, it's a mixed bag of emotion that we get for Christmas time. People that you miss, times that you used to share but can't anymore. And when we think about it, the first Christmas, the original, that wasn't necessarily in December, it was probably about February. There wasn't snow on the ground. It was probably more like this climate here. But it wasn't all that wonderful for Joseph and Mary either. It was a wonderful thing that Jesus was brought into the world, but it was about the only thing that happened good for that couple that night. Let's think about it. We sing Noel in Silent Night and we think peaceful. But it was actually very hectic. It was very crowded and it was smelly. The first Christmas was, for Mary and Joseph, was the tail end of traveling. How many of you love to be forced into traveling someplace? No? Yeah? Huh? Oh. One little girl in the back. They were traveling by compulsion, and even though many of us do it every year for Christmas, we have to be there for family. Joseph, he goes back to his family home, but not even his relatives, which he probably had many there, would put him and his pregnant fiancée up for the night. They wouldn't even take them in her condition because, So they had to find a motel. And you know how finding a motel is when you don't have reservations. You go for all the hotels in your price range, and when all of those are exhausted, they're all filled up, then you go, which is, the hotel hopping is always a joy, right? You go from the affordable, and then you get desperate and you go to the too expensive for your budget. Well, there's credit cards, and you look for those hotels, but they're all booked solid too. So you end up looking for those dive hotels, those ones with the neon signs, the ones that are still advertising that they have colored TV. And they don't even have vacancy, and so you, or Joseph in this situation, ends up going back to your car to tell your wife that you're going to have to spend the night in the underground parking garage on the corner. And for Mary, she's pregnant. She's tired, she's achy. She couldn't sit right, or she couldn't even get comfortable, even if she was on a luxurious couch. And here she is on a stack of hay. She wanted everything to be just perfect for her little baby, to bring this baby into the world, but nothing was perfect, nothing was right that night, that first Christmas. And when her contractions start, she has a cow staring at her in the face. A cow. There isn't a midwife anywhere. There's no nurses. There's no doctors. She doesn't even have her mom to speak words of comfort to her. And in that weird, strange, last resort place, she gives birth to her child, brings him into this world. And a little while later, to top it all up, seriously, only just a couple of hours that very same night, after you think that maybe you could get a wink of sleep in, a whole flock of unexpected guests arrive. No gifts either. And then a little boy wants to play his little drum till 2 a.m. Just kidding. And in the early morning hours, you and your spouse, your newborn child, lay there, no energy, no money, nowhere appropriate to sleep, exhausted and depleted. Merry Christmas. Is this how you would want to start the story of the best news that the world has ever known? No. And I'm glad John doesn't either. Please pray with me as we begin. Father, thank you for your gift, and thank you for this story. May it continue to change our lives every year, from summer until now. Amen. Let's see how John, the best friend of Jesus, the one closest to Jesus among his disciples, decided to tell the arrival of the arrival of Jesus, the telling of the coming of the promised one. Turn with me to John chapter 1. John chapter 1. And it begins, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." The opening statements of John, setting forth his all the hopes of the entire world, he begins by claiming that this Word has come from God, is God, and has come down, and is this light is the life of men, and that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. This is a bold statement for John to make. This is a statement that is really difficult for even the people in those days to swallow. A lot has happened in our world recently. We've had a lot of things happen even just in our own country. There's this darkness that seems to pervade everywhere. This darkness that seems to envelop and engulf, to keep people blind, to keep people in this deep oppression. And then to say that this light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Let's keep reading, verse 9. "This true light, which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him." What is darkness? Think about what darkness is. Darkness, can you taste it? Can you touch it? Can you hold it in your hand? Can you get rid of it by sweeping it out? Can you destroy it? Darkness, it's something that can only go away when light is there. Darkness in this world can only be expelled when there is light to counteract it, to shine within it. And so he says this true light, which gives light to everyone, was coming into this world, this hope in this dark world. that he was in the world and the world was made through him, yet the world didn't know him. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. Verse 12, but to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor the will of man, but of God. So everyone who receives this light, who acknowledges this light, who takes this light in, they become children of God, not because of their blood relation to him, not because they were born into a certain family line, not because they wanted to, because their flesh said, I want to be one with God. Not because the will of somebody else saying, yes, so I'll allow you to, but because God wanted it to happen. That through this light, we can become children of God. Light has power. Light has the ability to give life. In verse 14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory, glory of the only Son of the Father, full of grace and truth. Verse 16, for from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace, for the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has seen God, the only God who is at the Father's side. He has made him known. John opens this story of Jesus from his perspective with this great thesis statement. The point of the advent of Jesus, the promise becoming a reality, goes well beyond the Christmas nativity story. John doesn't even mention Mary and Joseph in the beginning. He doesn't mention the shepherds. He doesn't mention the wise men. He doesn't mention that starry night. He mentions none of that. He talks about a word. And and this hope is embodied in this word becoming flesh and walking among us, this word being light and shining in the darkness. The darkness of humanity had grown incredibly deep and overwhelming. Sure, Rome was oppressive. Sure, there was a lot of things that could be made right in those days, but there were religious institutions that had become corrupt. These beacons of light, these candles had become corrupt. They stopped shining. They had things covering them, other lights shining that were deflecting this light, that were dimming down this light. Hearts had been grown cold. Confusion and superstition were overshadowing God and his character. What is a little baby going to do in this great darkness? When someone is in darkness, no matter where you turn, no matter where you look, nothing changes. No matter where you go, no matter where you stumble, the scene never changes because you are in darkness. Darkness means that there's no information to show you where to walk. When you're in darkness, you're groping around, trying to rely on anything else in order to get you to where you want to go. Lies and falsehoods are surrounding you, and then truth comes, and truth, it gives you life, it gives you that direction, but darkness, if you stay in it, brings death. But the point of John's story is not about darkness, even though it is a deep darkness. It's an all-encompassing darkness. John's focus is the light, that this light came into the world, and that this darkness, this great darkness, no matter how great it is not going to, and never ever will overcome it. That baby was this spark of life, this spark of light, this spark of hope, this light of the world, and it shines in this darkness to demonstrate that image of God. to give hope in their distress, a glimmer of hope in a hopeless world doomed to its own self-delusion and destruction. And the darkness has not overcome it. And this is a really hard thing to see in our world today. It's very difficult to see hope. How do you see hope when there are people dying because they went to eat at a restaurant? There are people that go to school and they're gunned down. How can you say that there's hope then? It is in this really thick darkness that you can practically touch and you can feel. Where is that hope in all of that? It's hard to see, especially when all you can see, all that you've ever seen is darkness, and your eyes are not yet adjusted to this light, even to a tiny flame. Give yourself time, let your eyes adjust, and keep looking. Do not give up. It will not overcome. There's a story about a poet named Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, a celebrated poet, a very famous poet, one that in his time, in the 1800s, he was the most celebrated poet in his day. A lot of poets, they become famous after they die. No good to them. But for Longfellow, he got published, he got attention, he got celebrity, he got spotlight. When he went someplace, people knew who he was, and they celebrated his work. He was the most recognized American poet in the mid-1800s. You'd think someone with so much success would be a very, he'd have a lot then to be happy about. One thing about him, in his body, he had a chronic pain. Today, we would probably be able to diagnose it, but back then it was a problem with his nerves. He always had pain in his body, but he lived with it. And it probably gave him some clarity when he did have things to rejoice about, and when he's able to write his poems, to work his art. As in the middle of the 1800s, the Civil War started over oppression, over slavery in the South. For Longfellow, it was destroying him inside. That not only were Americans fighting Americans, a country in division, brothers spilling the blood of brothers, while they were still enslaving others. There were people that were being oppressed, that were being forced to be slaves, to not have their own free will, to not be allowed to exercise their own person, to be able to exist as a person with rights and dignity, but to be somebody's property. And these conflicts of nation and of human rights, it just was eating him up. And he wrote about it, he spoke about it. This time of civil war was consuming him, and as well as the entire country. His wife, Frances, they were married quite a few years, and one night, his wife was the story goes two ways, but one of the versions of the story is that she was sealing some envelopes with some hot wax, which of course comes from a candle, and the wax was dripping onto the envelopes, and she was sealing them. And as she did this, somehow her dress caught on fire while her husband was taking a nap. He wakes up from his nap, and he sees her in this distress. He throws a rug that was too small to do any good, threw a rug onto her dress, trying to put it out, eventually threw himself onto her and tried to put the flames out with his own body. And her burns were so severe, the love of his life, the mother of his children, were so severe that next morning she dies. And he himself has burns so that are also severe that disfigure part of his face to where he grows out a beard to cover it up. He has this pain in his body and as well as in his soul because of the what's happening in the nation that he loves, the nation that he's a part of, at what's happening against so many people all around him, and now his wife dies of something that is preventable, something that, what if he had only not, what if he had just stayed up? Why did he have to take a nap at that time? What if he had woken up just a little bit earlier? What if he was the one that offered to seal the envelopes? What if all these things were preventable and his wife would still be with him? A little while later, he wrote that the grief enveloped him so strongly that he felt that he would go insane. All of these pressures going on him, and he said, please don't commit me to an insane asylum, but I feel like I'm in that situation. I feel like it's that bad for me. And a little while after that, his oldest son, Charles, against his will, he never gave him permission, he writes to his father and he says, I'm going off to war. I'm going off to, if I can do something, if I can do anything, if my death will bring the end of this war closer, then I will gladly give it. And his son goes off into the Civil War. And Henry Longfellow is sitting there, and he has all of these internal and external things going on with him, and he gets word that his son was very severely injured in this war, and he might be paralyzed, the doctors suspected, and in this battle. And so he sits down and he writes out this poem. How else do you express your feelings? Sometimes you don't even know how you're feeling until you get it out on paper. And he writes these words that are much later put to music. He says, I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And thought how, as the days had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men, till ringing, singing on its way, the world revolves from night to day, a voice, a chime, a chant sublime of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then from each black, accursed mouth the cannons thundered in the south, and with the sound the carols drowned of peace on earth, goodwill to men. It was as if an earthquake rent the hearthstones of a continent and made forlorn the households born of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate, it's strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud, more deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men.